What is up? It's me, once again, from the past, coming at you with the second lesson. I hope you're all doing fantastic. I hope you're having a good time, and I hope it's not been too weird without me there. I do miss you guys, even though this is in the past, and anyway, currently, I do miss you guys, and I hope you're doing well. And if you need anything, shoot me an email, okay? I'm happy to help you out. All right. So today we're going to continue briefly talking about the cultural shift after World War II. Okay. Yesterday or last class we talked about the formation of Israel, right? And really the emphasis there is that America, right, after World War II has unparalleled levels of power. We really can kind of do whatever we want. Okay. And, you know, in the hands of maybe a different nation that could have gone very wrong, and there are definitely some things that do go wrong during the Cold War period that are directly traced back to the United States. But today we're going to specifically look at what is America like, okay? We're kind of talked about like how America is behaving on the world stage, this idea of like helping other countries, with the understanding that in the future we're going to kind of like get something on the return. Now let's talk about what does our country actually look like, okay? So I want you to think in your mind about the 1950s. What are some things that come to your mind? Okay, some images maybe, people, ideas, all right? First thing I think of, I don't know if this makes any sense. First thing I think about cars. I think about cool cars, you know, like a pink like hot rod. I think about milkshakes. I think about diners. I think about like, I don't know, greasers, you know, like the slick back hair. Society in the 50s was like, it really was kind of the golden age of our country, okay? Life appeared easy, right? I mean, like you got all the post-war optimism, right? The war is over, we won, we beat the bad guy, we got our payback, and we won big time. The economy was booming, so powerful. High employment, affordable housing. I mean, like y'all have heard the jokes that like, you know, past generations bought their house for like a Snickers bar and 2 dimes. Look, it's not really to that level, but there is some truth to that, to where like you could work at a grocery store and you could afford a home, a garage, a car. You could support a family with that. That's almost like so alien to us that we can't even understand it. But that was the way that it was. So I want you to think, if life was, you know, if the economy was so good, right? Most people were very, very happy. The 50s were a pretty, remembered as a pretty happy time. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. So I'm going to break this down. Number one, let's put in your notes. Let's make a new little section. 50s America, okay? All right, the first thing we're going to write down is post-war America was highly conservative. All right, remember, we're not necessarily, although kind of, we're not necessarily talking about politically conservative, although even Democrats in the 50s would be considered conservative today. Instead, we're talking about socially conservative, okay? That would mean like music, especially like I'm a music guy, I think about the music of the 50s, extremely tame, all right? One might even say kind of vanilla. You know what I mean by that? Like it's the tune that gets all the white people's, you know, feet bumping and they're like, this is quite the jam. That was the music of the 50s up until Elvis. And let me clarify that. That was the pop music of the 50s. Alternative music has always existed, and we'll talk about that a little bit today and tomorrow. But I want you to know that the 50s were highly conservative. To the point where anyone that didn't fit like the traditional American model was like weird. And I would say not even just weird, like you're questionable. Like, why are you doing that? It could be anything. For example, as you guys know, I used to have long hair, okay? If I had that kind of hair in the 1950s, people would look at me like I'm a freak. And maybe they do today still, I don't know. But back then they would have been like, this guy is crazy. Is he a communist? What's wrong with him? Why isn't he conforming like everyone else? Why isn't he just being normal? All right, there's a real cling to like American conservative values. So underneath, next point, highly Christian society. I don't think America's ever been more religious than we were in the 1950s. After World War II, there was just, a boom of return to Christianity. Christianity had always been really popular in America, less so in recent years. After the 1960s, it really kind of falls apart. But the 50s, man, if you didn't go to church, you're a communist, straight up. Okay, now obviously, I think that's unfair, right? But in the society of the 50s, it was like, if you're not conforming, if you're not doing what is normal, quote unquote, then you're dangerous. You're a weirdo. You don't belong here, okay? So, imagine growing up in that kind of environment. Clothing was very conservative, right? This was the era where, like, if you're showing calf as a girl, you're, like, scandalous. You need to cover up. You're showing leg, all right? Men, really combed hair, collared shirt, tie. Very, very formal. Everything was very formal. In fact, after this video is over, I'm going to ask Miss Rodriguez to show you a video. It is a 1950s public service announcement, basically an informative video. And it's called Dinner with Your Family. And it's pretty funny because what you're going to see is you're going to see a narrator kind of guide us through the proper way to communicate with your family. And one of the things that they talk about is that at the dinner table, there should be no emotional conversation. It should be unemotional. And that's kind of weird for us. Like, I kind of get, like, hey, if you're at dinner with your family, you don't want to bring up, like, something really traumatic or something like that. But at the same time, they're your family. In the 50s, it was like, you don't talk about that stuff, okay? Anything unpleasant, you don't talk about. Never, okay? You just like, closet everything. That is why, and I'm not trying to make a joke here, that's why after World War II, there's this big stereotype that domestic abuse was very common in the 50s, and it was. And it's because in the 50s, men were conditioned to not ever say how they're feeling because it's a sign of weakness. So I want you to imagine these men come back from war, and they could have seen horrific, horrible things. They're expected to just totally go back to normal, and then B, if they share any of their experiences, if they say that they're hurting, then they're weak, and so they're constantly kind of fighting this, turmoil in themselves. So obviously, I'm not excusing the abuse, but that would kind of explain why that is a stereotype, and that is kind of something that happened. So overall, the 50s were a really interesting time. I want you to write down, the 50s were remembered as the golden age. I don't know if they really were. I think they're remembered that way, and it makes sense why. But, there were a lot of problems in the 50s. There's a lot of groups that didn't prosper in the 50s, notably African Americans. When you think about the 50s and the people who were prospering, it's white people. It's not minorities. It's not black people in the South. They certainly were not prospering. Segregation was still in full swing. It wasn't until the civil rights movement of the late 1950s, early 1960s that things started to change. But again, this idea of the golden age is really kind of shaped by white America, right? That's who prospered after the war. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're doing good. And can't wait to see you guys. I'll give you another update when I'm actually at home. Trying to do as many as I can before she gets here, so that way, I'm not staying up late, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, blessings.
Hey
Siri, cue the outro.
What's the weather look like?
It looks like you're gonna need an umbrella. It's a little bit drippy.